Welcome back to this week's refinishing. I picked up this really interesting painted dresser from Facebook Marketplace. I could tell from the listing post that it was something special based off of the hardware. I did get it home, saw that there were quite a few chips in the veneer. The paint was scuffed. There was definitely going to be some repairs that were needed, but I was excited to try and tackle this because a lot of times these vintage mid-century pieces have absolutely beautiful walnut veneer. It'll be a challenge to fix some of these repairs, but I think it'll be worth it in the end. You can see whenever they painted this piece, there was a lot of overspray everywhere, so I will have to clean that up in all the drawer boxes. Follow along to watch me restore this really special piece of furniture. I'm gonna start refinishing this piece just like I refinish every other piece by removing the drawers and labeling their positioning. In this particular dresser, it does absolutely matter. Each drawer has its own specific placement that it needs to go. So for example, this is the left side drawer on the second row. Next, I'm gonna remove the hardware. I will set this to the side and clean them. And once this dresser is fully refinished, I will put them back on. I'm not sure of the exact type of paint that was used to paint this dresser, but I'm guessing it's some kind of chalk paint or mineral paint. It has that gritty feel to it when chalk paint is not sealed. And I do know chalk paint strips off really well, so fingers crossed that's what it is. I am going to use this Clean Strip chemical stripper. I will pour it into a separate container. I usually either use glass or metal. There aren't a whole lot of curved surfaces. There's actually no curved surfaces on this particular piece, so just my flat scraper is going to be the best tool for me for this one. There are some grooves in some of the drawer fronts, so I will use a wire bristle brush for those areas. And I will just use a disposable chip brush to brush on this stripper, making sure that I'm using some really thick gloves while doing this. After just a couple of minutes, you can see this paint is already starting to bubble. So I am going to start to scrape it, and it does look like, yeah, she did use a primer, which is good for durability, but it does mean that I will do another coat, another round of stripping on everything. After this second round of stripper, I can start to see it breaking through onto the veneer underneath. There's definitely at least 3 layers of paint on this piece. So it's having multiple layers that it has to go through. And after I give this some time to fully eat through it, scrape it again, I will go in with a after wash with a fine steel wool, and I will buff the surface. This will help to remove any leftover stubborn paint, as well as neutralize that stripper, help it to dry faster so that I can proceed to the next step, which would be sanding. After tackling those drawer fronts, I'm ready to tackle the body of the dresser. I'll do the same exact process that I used for those drawer fronts, starting out with the first coat of stripper on the top. You can see right here in the time lapse, that stripper is doing its job. It's so satisfying to watch stripper eat through paint. It bubbles up and then it scrapes right off. I got really lucky with the top of this dresser. For whatever reason, they only did one coat of paint on the top of this dresser, whereas on the sides and on the drawer fronts, they did 3 coats of paint. So I'm not sure if they just changed their mind in the direction they wanted to go, but it came off so nicely on the top, not so nicely everywhere else. I find it easiest to strip surfaces that are horizontal rather than vertical. So I have tipped this dresser on its side, and I will apply it, scrape this side, and then flip it to the other side to strip the other side. With the majority of the paint stripped off the drawer fronts, I am going to go in and start sanding. I can tell the previous owners did sand this piece, so I'm not sure what kind of shape the veneer is going to be underneath this hazy coat of residual paint. I'm hoping that it's still in good enough condition that I can remove the paint and restain and keep the integrity of the original piece. I am going to go in very carefully with a 220 grit sandpaper at first and see if I can get up the rest of the paint. If I need to switch to a 120, I will, but I'm going to go very carefully. I'm not looking to be aggressive whatsoever because I know that this piece has been sanded previously. I don't know how much veneer is left under this surface. And this is where my journey with paint and primer stuck in wood grain begins. I had to take this wire bristle brush with that afterwash product and a clean paper towel to every surface of this dresser, to the top, to the sides, to the drawer fronts, meticulously going through and using that wire bristle brush to loosen up any paint and primer that got stuck in that wood grain. This is pretty common in different wood grains similar to walnut. Walnut does tend to have more open wood grain, so this wasn't surprising after I stripped it that in order to get a really nice finish, I was going to have to go over by hand all the surfaces and scrub it. After my arm was so sore from all that scrubbing, it's finally time to go in with a walnut colored wood putty. I'm going to just fill in any of those missing areas of veneer that is chipped or missing. All of this is pretty surface level. None of it is a structural repair that needs to be made. So this lighter weight wood putty works wonderfully, and it's already a closer color than if I were to use a bright white or some other color. It's not going to be a perfect match, but it's going to give me a good base. This wood putty is also pretty stainable, so when I go to stain the rest of the wood veneer, it will absorb some of that stain color as well and get me one step closer to that color that I'm looking for. Once that's all dried, I'm going to take a higher grit sandpaper and smooth everything down just to knock down that wood putty so that it's flush with the rest of the surface. To stain this piece, I'm opting to use a special walnut colored oil-based stain by Varathane. I am going to use a foam brush and apply this stain to all of the wood surfaces that I want to be stained and pick up that color. So the drawer fronts, the top, the sides, and the framing that goes around the drawers. I'll brush this on in an even coat and then wipe it back with either a paper towel or a clean cotton rag, just something that you can throw away afterwards. You can see as this color goes on, it just really richens up the wood tone and it warms it up. It's a beautiful color over walnut and something that's pretty close to the original color that the manufacturer would have stained this piece to begin with. Staining a dresser like this will also help to blend the different tones of the different species of wood. Now, of course, the veneer is made up of walnut, but some of the internal structures of the dresser, like the framing, can be made of a different type of wood, something that maybe was a little bit more cost effective. That way they can still use a solid wood frame, but it's just a different species. By applying this stain, it evens it out compared to if I were to just top coat this entire piece as is. After giving the stain a full 24 hours to cure, making sure that the product is completely dry to the touch, I'm gonna go ahead and spray my top coat through my spray system. I did choose to use a satin water-based polyurethane. That's why it's so important to make sure the stain dries. Anytime you're putting any sort of water-based product over an oil, you have to make sure that the oil is completely cured before top coating it. I always filter all of my products through a mesh filter whenever I'm using my spray system. You can see right here, that is the exact reason. I'm gonna give the cavity of the dresser one last good cleaning to make sure all the dust, all the debris is out of there so that the air from my sprayer does not kick that up and cause it to land in the top coat. Before I start spraying, I always adjust my settings. Top coat is typically a looser product, so you don't want to have too much coming out of your sprayer at once. That will cause sags and drips. Whenever I spray, I try to overlap by at least 50% on each pass, using a smooth motion going in one direction whenever I can. I will spray this on and let it dry completely, and then I will use a very high grit sandpaper, like a 400, and I will just run it over that dry surface just to knock down any sort of dust bunnies that might have landed in the top coat while I was spraying. And now comes one of the really satisfying parts. I'm going to take this color correcting kit with some really fine tipped paintbrushes. I'll use a variety of different colors, and I'm going to start addressing those areas of wood veneer that had either come away and I refilled or need some addressing. I'm going to start with a base coat, and I will do 2 to 3 different layers of paint to really build up that wood grain look. Wood grain is comprised of a bunch of different colors, and if you just paint one solid color over it, you're not going to get that depth in the graining that you see in wood grain. So I will brush this on going in the same direction as the wood grain, and I will actually use my finger to feather out into the existing totally intact wood grain to try to blend everything in a little bit better. I do find that this product does dry down a little bit darker than it looks when it's wet, so I try to keep that in mind when I'm mixing my colors. I find that this process, it can look a little bit scary before it starts to look better. So if you do choose to use some color correcting paints on a wood finish and you're trying to mimic that wood finish, just keep trying and keep going with it. One of the reasons why I top coat at least one coat before I color correct is because this particular type of paint is water-based, and if I mess up in my color correcting and it's still wet, I can take a wet rag and I can wipe it off before it dries. It's pretty forgiving. It will slip around on that top coat. Just make sure that you seal this paint after you apply it. You can see here, I'm going to take that very fine tip paintbrush and I will take a dark brown and I'm going to create some faux graining as well as create some of those highlights that are found in this walnut wood grain. Again, as I need to soften it, I will take my finger and I will just lightly brush across it. This will soften that look and just help to not make it look so stark. And it will just help to soften the look up a bit. Looking back, this dresser had quite a few veneer touch-up areas that required some attention. But I think overall, they really blended in very nicely. And once that additional top coat was added on top of it, it really blended everything together. It all has the same sheen, and you can't even really tell. I am going to go ahead and do 2 additional top coats, again sanding very lightly in between. I really want to make sure to have that really good durability on this piece. One of my last steps, as always, is to thoroughly clean those drawer boxes. They're pretty sandy, they're pretty dusty, especially since I did have to sand so much overspray off from the previous paint job. I'm gonna vacuum it all out and clean it inside and out. I did decide to line these drawers, and because I was not replacing the hardware and I was doing a full restoration on this piece, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity to be creative and pick different colors or styles. But once I saw this paper, I really thought it was a perfect fit. It has a subtle nod to the original paint color that I picked this piece up in, and I wanted to honor a little bit of its history by choosing this particular print. I let the hardware soak in a good water and degreaser bath, and I'm going to thoroughly clean and wipe each piece, and then I will reinstall them into the drawer fronts. And that's another one in the books. Let's take a look back at where this piece started. I can tell the original owners really did try to take care of this piece. They really did try to do a good paint job. They took some steps that were in the right direction. They primed, they scuff sanded, all of that. I'm glad that they kept the original hardware intact. In my opinion, a piece like this just looks fantastic in its original restored state. And I have to say, I think that's exactly what I accomplished. I could not have been happier with how this piece turned out. It is absolutely gorgeous. It's one of those really, really rare mid-century pieces that still is in such good condition. Yes, it had some chipped veneer, some areas that needed attention, but I was actually pretty surprised that underneath that paint job, it was in as good of shape as it was. I really love those 3 bottom drawers, that the wood grain goes in a completely different direction. It adds such visual interest. I love the silver knobs. I think everything about this dresser just looks so well thought through, really expensive and sleek and modern. That drawer liner is such a fun pop. I really am proud of this piece. Let me know what you think down below. And if you like this video, check out some of my others. please feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you so much.